So we're live here today, and I want to thank everyone for coming in. Unfortunately, I don't have the setup that Neil Carberry was showing us, where we've got all of our panelists up on the screen, and I'm not in my suit either. So my name's John Healy. I'm the Vice President at the World Employment Confederation. Sorry about that. I also chair the blockchain task force for that organization. And I've got three great panelists with us today. And the topic that you guys have all come in to hear about is about digital attraction and innovating for client and talent growth. So there's this B2B as well as a B2C side of things. So I'm going to start out letting our panelists provide a quick introduction. And then we've selected three areas that we're going to really dive into a little bit deeper. I will be monitoring the chat on another channel to make sure that any questions that you guys have that you want us to explore, that we can bring that into the conversation. So looking forward to that. So from an introduction standpoint, I was raised with 6 older sisters and a mother. So Gabrielle, I know ladies go first.
Wonderful, super. Hi, I'm Gabrielle Ceci. I head up marketing for All Sorter. We're a HR tech company based in Dublin, operating globally with over 1,000 recruiters globally who are using our software to basically speed up their candidate to market processing and help them to win placements faster. So that's us.
Excellent. Steve.
Yeah, hi John, good afternoon. My name is Steve Barnhurst. I am the Commercial Director for Volcanic. We are part of the Access Technology Group. I think we're listed as Access today, but I focus very much on the Volcanic side of the business. We are the market leader for providing websites to the recruitment industry, and we power over 2,000 individual recruitment websites here in the UK alone, but we have sites across the globe. And without giving too much of a sales pitch, John, you know, whilst that's what we sell, it's not really what we do. So our core focus is on attracting candidates, but more importantly, getting them to convert so that agencies can make more placements, amongst a whole host of other things as well, which hopefully we'll touch upon today.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. And Nigel?
Hi, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm Nigel Gordon-Johnson. I work in the talent acquisition department at Dell Technologies. For my sins, I've been in the recruitment industry perhaps for longer than I would care to admit, but it's around about 20 odd years, he says quietly, and half of which has been agency, and the last half working directly on site in talent acquisition teams, mainly technology. It's sort of given me a broad amount of experience across the world. So I have been fortunate enough that I've been based in glamorous locations like across the US and in the Caribbean, and perhaps not so glamorous locations across the UK. I've written a few books, had a few published in guides, mostly relating around recruitment, and last year specifically about helping people find a job during the pandemic that we've been in for the past year.
Good. So for just I guess a quick housekeeping piece to encourage everyone, whether it's questions in the chat function, whether it's using the swap card application to connect with our speakers if you want to follow up with people afterwards because there's something that caught your attention, or use LinkedIn. But this group is here kind of to encourage a conversation, and a conversation that I don't think is one that just ends after today. I think REC has pulled this topic together, and if you even look, there's another session going on in relation to technology. Technology has been changing in this industry for a long time. So Nigel, I will admit I am over 30 years in the recruitment and staffing industry. I'm proud to have been in it back in the days of pump file cards and writing down your 100 cold calls every day, and have seen so much of the change that's happened. So let's just start out kind of as an open question to the three of you about the tools that are emerging in today's market. You know, what are the things that you're seeing that are really emerging within this recruitment space that are driving productivity gains for recruiting firms? So we're going to reverse order, and Nigel, I'll offer you to get us kicked off.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating, John, because I mean, it's sort of taking up on your point of where we've all come from, because we've all had in some respects from recruiting worlds that you start off in a we really did start off in a true analog way, and we've sort of seen that how that sort of digital revolution is going through. But I think what we're witnessing is not necessarily, and what I want to talk about is not necessarily what we've got currently, but what we're starting to looking at, and especially with the 5G revolution happening, where you're going to get a lot more intuitive artificial intelligence, things that will start really helping towards finding the right talent. You know, especially in organizations like Dell, you know, what we're looking for is we want diverse, exceptional talent anywhere in the world. And the real challenge, and especially now with what is happening with COVID, I think what we're all starting to witness is that the competition for talent is going to be extreme. If anything, it'll probably be the most competitive that it's ever been. And getting a differentiator of how you reach those people and then also take them through a journey, because qualitative search and finding and sourcing talent is perhaps going to be the thing that will take us forward. I think perhaps up until now, it's been very much driven towards efficiency drives. How do we improve processes? Whereas I think the real drive going forward is going to be, how do we get quality? And it's not just quality in terms of candidate, but real quality in terms of that candidate experience going forward.
Very good. Gabrielle?
Yeah, I would concur with Nigel. I think, you know, there has been a lot of focus, and particularly with, you know, the high flex approach to working, looking at how to improve efficiencies across HR and recruitment. And I think from a recruiter's perspective, especially with such a labor short market, labor poor market, you know, they're trying to figure out, how can I differentiate myself? How can I add value to both candidates and to my clients? As well as, you know, it's a given that they want to work more efficiently, faster, be more productive. But of course, trying to identify talent is the key. And how are they able to, you know, attract the right talent, the right set of skills? How can you identify them? What technologies are out there that can help you identify the people with the right skills from the right backgrounds, that are diverse, to create the equitable and fair organizations that we want moving forward?
Well, Steve, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, John, is that the market's obviously changed back, and the market changed quicker than probably any of us have ever seen before. So sort of coming out of a recession, it recovered almost overnight, and, you know, recruitment is on fire at the moment. You know, businesses are posting record figures, and we're seeing some great activity out there in the marketplace. You know, interestingly, and shouldn't really say this as a sort of supplier to the industry, but historically companies have bought tech. And if you were to look at what they've spent on tech, I'm not sure what they've generated at desk level in terms of fee income has gone up, you know, at the same rate as the investment. So it's interesting to see what the actual, you know, profitability of a desk is these days compared to where it was, you know, maybe 5-10 years or so ago. And I think maybe what I'm seeing at the moment is a slight shift, whereas pre-COVID, everybody was looking for that magic bullet, that next killer piece of tech that was going to solve all the problems and just do it all for them. I think people are really starting to look at the tech that they've got and think, you know, are we actually getting everything out of the tech that we've already got? Are we maximizing its potential? You know, if you took your iPhone, for example, or your laptop, you know, we'd probably scratch the surface in terms of the features and functionality it brings. So I think a lot of recruitment companies, before they just jump in and buy something new, are just thinking, are we getting everything we can out of the tech we've got? So I think there's an interesting thing there. And as I was saying to Gabrielle just before we started, I think the other interesting thing which will play a factor is, for very obvious reasons, a lot of recruitment companies have downsized over the last 12, 15 months, and maybe they've gone from 50 to 20 and they want to grow, but I don't think that many of them want to get back to 50. I think there's probably an aspiration to go from 20 to maybe 25, 30, but still try and deliver the same fee income of 50 recruiters. So how can they get more out of the people they've got? How can they be more efficient with the technology that they either have or is available to them? And yeah, can they really focus on quality? Because just getting more applicants is a pointless exercise. You know, you need the right applicants for the right jobs at the right moment in time. So I think we'll start to see a little bit more of a focused approach in terms of how people go about it, but difficult right now because, you know, good people, real talent is very scarce.
I think one of the fun things that I'm starting to see emerge really more over the last 18 months than previously is that the ecosystems are starting to come together. So for a long time, you had a lot of technology being introduced to solve an individual problem. The challenge for the owner of that recruitment firm was that they had 72 different softwares that they needed to combine together to make something happen. Or, you know, in the internal talent acquisition space in a corporate environment, I remember it was CB Insights used to post the 125 softwares that are reshaping HR. Well, yeah. Who's able to keep touch with everything that's going on? And so many of them are venture backed, things are changing out. We're starting to see those ecosystems come together and bring some things in. So those opportunities to really drive to quality, to gain the efficiency side of things are starting to come in. And that what's triggered me on it, and where I'll kind of go next, is this aspect of human-centric design. That we've gotten to this point that, you know, instead of focusing on the recruitment firm, you know, it's the individual frontline recruiter I care about on one end. It's the talent that they're trying to engage and the experience that we want to provide that individual, or it's that hiring manager and the experience that we want them to have as they're bringing people into their organization, whether that's as labor hire or it's as a full-time employee or as an independent contractor or a gig worker, or, you know, pick your poison of what's there. That experience really needs to become more improved along the way. So the question I'd pose to you guys is to think about this maybe from a consumer expectation perspective. You know, each of us has, pick a device, you know, we've all got something like this that, you know, we live our lives in day to day. And one of the things that we've seen from consumers is a much lower tolerance level for a bad experience. So if I don't like my experience in retail, I leave that organization immediately and we run over to another retailer and find a better experience. And so as we think about that experience in the recruitment process, how long is the worker going to tolerate a bad experience? And when are they going to leave and go to another organization to get something done? So kind of take me through from your expectations as our lives are changing as consumers, the hiring managers, the staff we have, and the talent that we're trying to recruit into our organizations. What are businesses having to do to provide better solutions into this marketplace, not just today, but maybe even, you know, 2-3 years out, so that people can be thinking about the type of investments they should be looking at to really improve that consumer experience?
I think if I can jump in, John.
Yeah,
I think you know, one of the things you touched upon about people leaving one organisation going to another, you know, if they're not happy in that retail environment. The other killer piece that we've got to be really cognizant of is that not only do they leave one retail organisation and go to another, but in between they go and post about that bad experience, and they're quite happy to do so. You know, we live in that world where people are happy to share bad experiences more so than they are good experiences. I guess that's the good and the bad of the social media elements of it. But I think for me, we've spoken for years about the candidate experience, and I think we've gone beyond candidate experience and we're now into the realms of candidate expectation. You know, as you said, we live our lives in such a way that we can get whatever we want whenever we want it. You know, we can get a taxi at the flick of a button, Christmas presents, flick of a button, movies, food, you name it, flick of a button. And I think that is starting to creep into, you know, the everyday psyche of the individuals. So from our point of view as technology providers, or more so as recruitment owners, we need to find a way to keep our candidates more informed. We need to find a way to be more transparent. We know the industry's got, and I say it because I was a recruiter for 15 years myself, so I can get away with it, got a terrible reputation for giving feedback. But if I can look on an app and see my taxi coming down the road and I know when it's going to get to me, I should be able to get a similar experience with my job application. right? And I think once we get to that, then we really will be able to get candidates to buy into us as an organization, as an agency. You know, they'll actually like to work with us because they'll get that reciprocal feedback in terms of the actual working process. So I think tools that, you know, personalize content, personalize data, you know, give the candidate the ability to update their records, update their CVs, you know, get relevant information coming back to them. I think that will all enhance that experience and ultimately the expectations that candidates do now have.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, both of you. And Steve, you know, you touched upon there that absolutely that it is the expectation. And we've come to an age now where people do expect a level of service. And if they don't get that, they're more than happy to talk about it because everyone's so used to it. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's interesting because it also is mindful of me to me about the existing technology and how we actually implement it as well. Because one of the things that I've noticed with candidates is one of the most frustrating things they ever have is if they apply for a job and it automatically takes their CV or takes it from LinkedIn, and then the next page they go on the ATS is that you've now got to refill the whole application form out yourself. And quite often, and that's just that all that simply is just that it's been implemented incorrectly. Yeah. And so it's not just only finding the right solution for whether you're a recruitment partner or whether you're an end user client, an in-house function, but also ensuring that it's implemented correctly, and it's implemented in the way that the customer, i.e., the candidate, wants. And what they want is, and you're right, we've all had these things where we're going to Deliveroo or whatever else like that, and we expect something, you know, our pizza or whatever, to be delivered, whether it's in the middle of the park or in your home, and it's delivered straight to you quickly, qualitatively. The person is fantastic, everything's right, and you can, as you say, follow it all the way on your mobile phone. If we can get to the same level of service on recruitment, that automatically puts you into a position whereby you are a differentiator to your own competition. Yeah, because as you say absolutely rightly, so I was saying that I think one of the biggest complaints that candidates ever have is the fact I make an application or I hear from a recruiter and then suddenly I'm in a black hole. Yeah, absolutely. I never hear anything for months.
Disappears. And if you think about the industry, you know, we let down far more people than we help. You know, if you take very generic numbers, you post an advert, you get 50 people respond, only one person at the end of the day gets the job. 49 people go home unhappy. Right now, maybe not so in this current environment, but you know, our obligation should be to keep all 50 people informed throughout that process so that we help them for that next opportunity. But you know, because of the way it's a rewards-based environment, you know, we get paid on results only, the focus goes on the successful one and far less so on the unsuccessful 49. And I think to your point about ATSs, it's always been a standing joke that, yeah, upload your CV and then you got to repopulate it. We know that the drop-off rates on ATSs are crazy. Yeah. I mean, I've seen people cite 60, 80% drop-off rates. And I think whereas it used to almost be, well, that was just the drop-off rate, what people are now doing is thinking they will instantly judge that company on that. Well, if that's how they operate there and they consider that important, what on earth is it going to be like to work for them? So I just won't bother again. And I think we need to be very mindful of the fact that you only get one chance to make a first impression. And they probably won't apply for another job at that company just based on that.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think we need to be really switched on to that fact.
Yeah, there's definitely some basics that we can improve around the experience and the expectation. And I think, you know, we've all been, you know, used to scenarios where people are just applying for jobs and, you know, again, there's the wrong expectation that they've got the skills for the job. So how are we, you know, how are we setting those expectations both for the candidate and how are we communicating those? And then, you know, at the end of the application process, you know, how are we feeding that back? And that's definitely not being properly addressed today.
So let me maybe ask a follow-up in this, because it's easy to talk about the expectations have shifted and they've certainly increased. We all know that that's there. One of the areas that I tend to look to is from a pure marketing perspective. If we all go to Netflix or pick whatever streaming service that you have, each of us goes and looks at the exact same show, we're going to get a different piece of clip art to introduce that show because it's going to make it match to what I want to see. That's all about personalization. And it's, you know, every consumer company, Nigel, your business as a your B2C business, you know more about me as a 55-year-old white American male who's traveled the world and what products I'm going to need and want, so that when I go onto the Dell site, I get that immediately customized. What's preventing us from applying that same level of personalization into the recruitment process for the hiring manager and or for the individual talent that we're going out to have conversations with? Are we still stuck trying to believe every individual should be treated the exact same way when they come to our sites?
I think we're starting to see that, John, right? So, you know, without making this a sales pitch, we surface that information on our websites to returning individuals, right? And being very careful not to call them candidates, because I think you're not a candidate until you're actually in the interview process. Up until then, you're a job seeker. But somebody comes to a website and they start looking at banking and finance roles. Well, the next time they log in, we're going to surface relevant information to them to try and enhance the experience. We have a long way to go, but it's certainly something that, you know, we're very, very passionate about building into the platform. I think with other tools, whether or not it's the sort of the chatbot functionalities that, you know, we're starting to see people adopt a lot more, you know, that's starting to push out jobs on a more relevant basis to people. So I think, you know, personalization is very much coming into the recruitment ecosystem far more than it has done over the last few years.
Yeah, and that there's a comment in the chat earlier. And I don't know if it's a question or a comment that's brought into it, but it was tying pressure on all the marketplace to attract each force. So if the 18 to 24-year-olds are not adopting, do they go to a different platform? Do, you know, is business if I
think we're having some connectivity issues there, are we?
Yeah, I don't know if we lost John or has he lost us?
Either that or he's doing that on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Just pretending. But he makes a good point. I mean, I get the point he's doing. Just to sort of continue on that, is that, you know, I think that personalization side of it is really critical. And when where we were right at the beginning, where we were talking about what's happening post pandemic, and the fact of the nature of that talent is at a premium and it's going to be very competitive. And you know, I'm sure, you know, Dell is not the only people who look at it and think, you know, we want specific types of talent. It needs to be personalized. So that whole journey that we take from the moment we interact with them right the way through to when they either get a job offer or not should be absolutely personal. And that's sort of where we look at as a business, is looking to say what we're looking to do is not just about what are the skill sets of that individual, but what is the motivator for that individual? What does that person want from their career? What can we help for them? So we personalize that as much as we can. And I think that going forward for technology wise, in tools to help that recruitment process, I think there is going to be a massive premium on personalization, and for tools that are unable to do that probably won't survive. I think if it just goes back to that, because people cry out for it, they cry out for understanding them as an individual, what their wants are, because we've all talked about it. No one candidate is the same. They're all slightly different, and quite often they will be different over a 6-month period in terms of what they're after. The key is going to be as to how we actually find that, discover that, and then keep them engaged right the way through that process.
Yeah, I can't remember which company it was. I think it was one of the big guns like IBM, but a couple of years ago, my understanding is they changed the final stage of their offer process. So they were making offers to candidates and they weren't being accepted or not to the extent that they wanted. And the story goes is that when it came down to it, they would offer the basic salary, but they would leave the benefits entirely up to the candidate and say, look, you've got X amount to spend. Because to your point, everybody wanted something ever so slightly different. And so it allowed the candidate to actually self-select And by doing that, they found that they had a much higher acceptance rate because it was a truly personalized and individual experience. So maybe a little bit different for the recruitment agencies because we sit in the middle of that process, right, as opposed to the actual end hiring company. But I think we can still work hard to, personalize the jobs and the content and the service that we ultimately give to people. And I think that goes as far as how people wish to communicate. The industry's always been built on very much over the phone, but there will be people, and there's a generation, probably like my kids, who I wouldn't say have a fear, but have got no desire to engage with anybody on the telephone, me included. Like they will literally send a text when you're in a different room because using the phone is just a hideous experience. And so maybe we have to adapt to that and think that is an element of personalization, that there is a demographic where we will have to just do it on WhatsApp, and there's nothing wrong with that, and not see it as an issue. So I think, we have to take that upon ourselves and personalize our approach to how people wish to engage as well. So not just the technology, but how we utilize the technology needs to be personalized.
And I'd also say, I think also of a variety, because I think you're absolutely right. What will work for one set of people won't work for another.
Yeah.
It might well be that that people from a different previous experience will think, if I'm texted, they'll think that's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
They want to be spoken to. And then there'll be others that will think, why is this person ringing me? They sort of answer the phone as if it's what's this weird thing that's ringing.
Yeah. I mean, it probably does exist, but if you imagine if you had like a portal where your emails came in and your WhatsApp came in and your LinkedIn came in and your Snapchat came in, and you could manage everything from there, that would probably be the holy grail for a lot of people, right? Because different people want to engage in different ways. And I think that is going to play a part moving forwards for sure.
All right, so one, thanks for continuing the conversation as my bandwidth had its little...
You need to buy some new technology, John.
Exactly. Nigel, we're going to have to connect after this, make sure we get connected properly.
Exactly.
I want to extend this into transformation because, Steve, you talked of IBM having a different hiring process, and they changed it. Actually, consulting with an organization that's based out in Silicon Valley, and they've really been struggling to attract talent. They're all going to the tech companies, and in their hiring process, what they've changed at the end is they don't issue an offer. They let their 3 finalists submit their offer, and have said that's the experience that people are looking for. Is they want to say it was Priceline was the travel company. Submit your offer of what you want to join us, and we'll either accept it or reject it, and put it in a different light. So, I think at times we keep looking for these small incremental changes, and we end up with a process that has become so cumbersome and so complex that it really doesn't work well. And so I want to take this into one of the functions of REC now and how they can help their members. And I want to talk about this emerging digital wallet that we have in the marketplace. So, we all know that our COVID vaccination needs to be tracked somehow. So everyone's kind of jumped on this bandwagon in governments across the globe right now saying, okay, there's a way that we can start tracking that. And the question that seems to be emerging as you talk to more and more government officials, I was on with a crew from Australia, I guess there this morning, my last night, and where they're caught on it right now is what additional things should we be putting in this wallet? And the learning that everyone was very open to was that through this pandemic, what we saw was suddenly this large population of people lose their job. So we all know that happened. But at the same time, there were organizations who were desperately in need to hire people. So whether they were trying to get PPE out the door or get PPE manufactured, and often the skills were relatively comparable, but our ability to move a worker from one job to another, well, no, I need to go back and I need to do the background check, or there was a question in there, the right to hire work checks that need to go on. And we slow things down over and over. So the question that's been emerging is it time for the industry to come together and use REC, who already has relationships with the ministers of labor across throughout the country and throughout the United Kingdom as a whole, but to start really challenging inclusion of data elements that will allow for people to connect with work more easily, for companies to gain access to workers more easily, improve that mobility across the board. Thoughts for you guys as it relates to digital wallets and how that may come into the working environment? Gabrielle, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, we're actually looking at this currently, and indeed have been building a model whereby effectively, and this is going to come across as a plug, but there you go. We're looking at a apply with all sorter button that individuals would effectively be able to submit their profile, their city in whatever form, and that data is then able to be extracted in terms of skills, abilities, motivations, etc., and that is then available in a repository where effectively there can be a deep dive analysis around what are the skills that we have here and how can we transfer them there, and getting a high level macro. In fact, we're working with a couple of UK organizations as to how we can analyze and best identify skills available and what then needs to be done to develop and evolve those skills for emerging needs into the future, now and into the future. So the data extraction and getting a really good grip on that in terms of being able to get what's required to give the insights that's needed to fill those emerging positions and those requirements from the labour market.
Nigel or Steve, thoughts?
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's certainly interesting. I look and think there's probably a few potential hurdles you're going to have along the way, and some of those hurdles are going to be more regulatory than anything else. Plus, I'm sure we all see it from time to time where there is a nervousness amongst the general population about what people do with their own data. We've obviously all went through the wonderful GDPR over the past few years, but I think there is a big awareness of what is happening to my data from a consumer point of view. So I think if you manage to get over those two areas there's certainly some mileage in it in terms of looking as to what you can do with it. The only thing that I would look at is that I think it's a lot of those areas work in fairly highly transactional type of roles, ones where it is just purely based on skill set. I think once you get into roles that you have more character that you assess, that becomes more of a challenge and more of a challenge as to where that goes. But certainly in a sector of the market, there is a potential there.
Yeah, and I think, John, you touched upon it. I think the government thankfully has just pushed back the decision to allow right to work to continue online digitally up until I think the end of August. And I think there's certain pieces of data that we should be quite happy to share, such as that, and to put it into the digital wallet, because if you've got an individual, or some organizations have multiple individuals just doing the physical screening checks of candidates, incredibly laborious task, prone to massive mistake just through human error. Of course it's going to be. And if you could free up those individuals and point them at something far more productive, that has to be better for you as an organization. It's also better for the candidate because it speeds up the hiring process. So I think things like that are absolutely key. But if you almost go right the way back to sort of day dot, we still haven't really managed to get our own CVs into a digital wallet. So I could, I don't really travel into London on a train anymore, but if I wanted to apply for a job, pre-pandemic, at best, I'd probably send an alert to home. So when I got home in the evening, I'd log on to my desktop and format my CV, and then I'd send it to the individual, right? So, carrying the CV, we've not really fixed that issue, I don't think, in the digital wallet point of view. But I think certain pieces of information like right to work, that should almost just be a given. I don't think we should be concerned about that at all.
And the encouragement I would provide for everyone in the audience on that is to really think about coming together as an association, as an industry. That's what we were able to get done at the World Employment Confederation level. So think of REC, there are 50 of these organizations spread in the largest economies around the world. So we got the lead digital and innovation and technology folks together from the largest corporate members that we have on a global scale. And there's some pretty radical transformational thinking that has to happen, like who owns the data? And all of our systems and processes are built on the assumption that when an individual applies to us, that's our information, whether it's the base. It's also corporate social responsibility is coming in that we need to think about this differently. And so a piece of encouragement for everyone in the audience is to think about can play in advocating for the things that you want as a collective whole. There is no new standards get formed unless you that comes together. You say, Walmart is the easiest example in our recent history, where RFID was introduced by Walmart, and they said, if you want to do business with us, you will. And they had enough clout to do that. The world of employment, it's hard to say, does anyone have that clout? My sense is right now that as an industry, and this comes from Guy Ryder, who's the Deputy General at the ILO, offered the challenge back to us as an industry and said, so many people either enter or re-enter the workforce through the recruitment industry, that you guys should come together and really demand some transformational change. So just a point of encouragement for everyone to think about. So I'm taking a look at the questions that are there in the chat, and we'll kind of finish with that as we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left to go through. And I'm seeing a couple things that are standing out. One is this question of kind of what's holding us back. We all know that we need this improved personalization and these things. What's preventing us from getting there? And coupled into that is, well, how do I personalize if I've never met you? I don't know what your needs are. So how do I make that experience as personal as I can when I'm first trying to attract you? Is that a market research piece of work that needs to go on? Is that a gap for the industry right now? Any thoughts on either of those two topics?
Well, it's interesting that exactly that. I think that has been, I can remember 10 odd years ago, probably having a similar conversation as to with the development of technology for recruitment back then, is the how do we personalize it? How do we do that? That is still the perennial question. Now, what I would say is that I think that as we move into, and I hate to use all the wonderful branding messages, but of the digital revolution that will be 5G, and it really is quite considerably more than just, it's a little bit quicker than 4G. The ability that it has there, I think that is what is going to spread it in terms of the true innovation of autonomous artificial intelligence and systems that will work these different things out. I think that will revolutionize it quite considerably. But I think the other thing that we haven't sort of mentioned too much, but I think is worth putting in there, which is interrelated, is how social media acts with this, because the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook and everyone else aren't just going to sit there and say, well, I tell you what, everybody else, there's an open field, off you go and do that. LinkedIn's whole premise is about how do you connect with the right people and personalization. And it's still growing. It's, the last stat I saw for LinkedIn was a 250,000 people every single day that they still get added to. So it is a massive market. And I think it'll be interesting to see the impact of social media and how that changes. I think there's an awful lot in technology that perhaps is underutilized by the recruitment industry within social media. And it's strange because the funny stat I saw was 96% of all recruiters globally are on LinkedIn. So the fact that we're all on it and all use it to a greater or lesser degree, but I think the more that becomes more intuitive and becomes the true element of how do you interact, and that social element, I think that's where, in actual fact, there's going to be a larger and quicker spread in terms of new technologies, most likely through social media.
I think, just mindful of time, I think the LinkedIn thing is interesting because they've recently changed their rules, right? So you've now got a limit. I think it's 100 people you can connect with on a monthly basis. You can't go beyond that. They started to introduce the concepts of followers, because they actually now want you to engage far more with people on the platform. So even they're changing in terms of what they're doing. But just going back to John's question about how do we personalize it, I think we need to be mindful of the fact that a lot of recruiters are still relatively small businesses. You know, in the UK, 75% of the industry is less than 10 recruiters. So you're going to have owner-run businesses that don't have great big IT teams, great big marketing teams. And I think you need to go back to basics first and think, what do we excel in terms of the roles that we recruit for? And then work it backwards and understand where are we good? You know, where do we dominate when it comes to recruitment? We're not a jack of all trades. Maybe some agencies are, and that's cool. But if you're a specialist recruiter, what do we want? And then just map out all of your processes and think, well, does that, what we do at the placement end, does it marry up with what we do on the website end? Because I see it firsthand that the website is basically, well, we've got it and it was done and it's finished. You know, the website needs to be a living, breathing, evolving project along with your agency. So is the content you're putting out actually in line with the placements that you're looking to make? So, you know, personalization, we don't necessarily need to overcomplicate it. We just make sure it's consistent with what the business stands for. But I think the technology is certainly there and is getting better and better from a personalization point of view. But you need to know what you're trying to attract. So as we always say, if you're not measuring this stuff, you've not got any chance at all.
And John has frozen one more time. All right, we're down to about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to give you each an opportunity to kind of give your closing thoughts on anything that's missing, any core advice you'd give to kind of the owners or the head of operations for the firms that are all on the call listening to you today.
May I just start there? I think, you know, it's very true. If you just look at the UK alone, you know, you've got what, 45,000 supposed agencies, recruitment agencies operating out there. And, you know, as Steve says, 75% of those are very small agencies. So how can they differentiate themselves? And it's true, map out your processes, decide what's priority. But I think what's really important is to ensure that you are engaged with your clients and your candidates in a truly personal way. And especially when you're a small business owner, that personal touch can't be undervalued. And try and automate processes that you can, and make sure you save time for the important stuff in building relationships.
Nigel?
Yeah, listen, I think that's absolutely true. In the market we're in now, from a client perspective, as we said right at the beginning, what we're really looking for is something different. And part of that difference is providing quality, providing exceptional talent. And I think certainly for recruitment owners, if you can do anything on that differentiates you from the competition, I think you're always going to do well. And understanding that the market that we're going into, I think is going to be quite unique. It's going to be very different from what we've all seen coming out of this pandemic. And I think that is going to be based on, I think the clients are going to be looking no longer at just give me CVs and just get me people quickly. It is about the quality element of it, and can you match the values of that organization? And if you can do that and you can demonstrate that it's far better than anyone else out there, you will do well.
Steve?
Yeah, I think that in the current market as it is, John, I think that as recruiters, we are obligated to drive clients to make quicker decisions. We need to educate them that if their process is poor, if their feedback is slow, they are going to be the people that are responsible for losing their next hire. And the organization, and I hate the word, who can be agile, who can move quickly, who can be flexible on times, don't have a 5-stage process, they're going to get the talent and take it off the market in a matter of days. You know, I would imagine there's probably jobs getting posted and filled within a 10-day period right now. If you can't move fast, doesn't matter what tech you've got, you will not stand a chance when it comes to hiring people. So recruiters push clients, educate them on the market, and demand that they move quickly or go and work with other clients.
Close then. I want to thank Gabrielle, I want to thank Nigel and Steve for your active participation, fun conversation, a point of encouragement, not to just yourself, but to think about where collectively we can come together and compete as an industry to make access to work through our industry more effective. And I'll close with the housekeeping. It's back to stage one, the live stage. So you may need to hit refresh to get there. Our next keynote is Lord Karen Billamora, the president of CBI and Cobra Beer. Thanks all.
Thank you.
John, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.